My wife regretted marrying me, but karma put her in her place. When I married Emma, I believed we had something special, a bond built on love, trust, and a shared vision for the future. She was my best friend, the person I thought I'd grow old with. For years, I lived in the comfort of that belief, never once questioning her commitment. That all changed one evening. I had come home early from work, exhausted but looking forward to a quiet night with my wife. As I entered the house, I heard her voice drifting from the living room. She was on the phone, laughing and chatting with someone. I was about to call out to her when something she said stopped me in my tracks. "I don't know, Sarah," she said, her tone light but tinged with something I couldn't quite place. "Sometimes I wonder if I settled." My heart sank. "What do you mean?" I heard her friend ask on the other end of the line. Emma hesitated before replying. "Don't get me wrong. He's a good guy. He treats me well and all that. But sometimes I think about what could have been, you know? Like, what if I'd waited for someone more exciting?" The words felt like a punch to the gut. I stood frozen in the hallway, struggling to process what I had just heard. Her laughter broke the silence. "I mean, it's not like I'm unhappy," she added quickly, as if trying to justify her thoughts. "But there are moments when I think, is this really it?" I didn't hear the rest of the conversation. My mind was spinning, replaying her words over and over. Settled? What could have been? These weren't things you said about someone you loved. Not in private, not ever. I quietly backed away, retreating to the bedroom and closing the door behind me. My chest felt tight, my breathing shallow. The woman I had built my life with, the woman I adored, was questioning if I was good enough for her. When Emma finally came upstairs, she greeted me with her usual smile, as if nothing had happened. I forced myself to act normal, but inside, I was breaking. That night, as she fell asleep beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her words echoed in my mind, each one cutting deeper than the last. I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't pretend everything was fine. I had to confront her, but I needed time to gather my thoughts. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy heart. Emma moved around the kitchen, humming as she prepared breakfast, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I sat at the table, watching her, trying to reconcile the person in front of me with the words I'd heard the night before. Finally, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice quieter than usual. She looked up, a hint of concern crossing her face. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "I overheard your conversation with Sarah last night," I said. Her face froze for a split second before she recovered, her expression carefully neutral. "What do you mean?" "I heard what you said," I replied, my voice firmer now. "About wondering if you settled. About questioning if I'm enough." She blinked, her mouth opening and closing as if she didn't know what to say. Finally, she sighed and set the spatula down on the counter. "You weren't supposed to hear that," she said softly. "That's not the point," I said, frustration bubbling to the surface. "The point is, you felt it, and you said it. So, tell me, Emma, do you really think you settled?" She hesitated, her eyes darting to the floor. "I don't know," she admitted. "It's not that simple." "Then make it simple," I said. "Help me understand. Because right now, it feels like you're telling me I'm not good enough for you." "It's not about you," she said quickly. "It's about me. I've been feeling restless. Like maybe I rushed into things before I fully figured out who I was or what I wanted." Her words stung, but I forced myself to stay calm. "You didn't feel restless when we got married," I pointed out. "You didn't question what you wanted then." "I didn't think I had to," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought this was what I wanted, and for the most part, it is. But there are moments when I can't help but wonder, what if? What if?" I repeated, my anger rising. "Emma, marriage isn't about what if. It's about commitment. It's about choosing each other, every day, no matter what doubts creep in. If you're not willing to do that, then what are we even doing here?" She flinched at my words, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't have an answer for you," she said finally. "I just know that I'm confused and scared, and I don't know how to fix it." Her vulnerability softened my anger, but it didn't erase the hurt. "Do you even love me?" I asked quietly. She looked at me, her eyes filled with guilt. "I do," she said. "I just don't know if love is enough." The weight of her words hung between us, suffocating and final. "I need time to think," I said, standing up from the table. "I need to figure out if I can live with being someone's second choice." Emma didn't stop me as I walked out of the kitchen. After that conversation, I felt like the foundation of my world had been shaken. For years, I had believed in the life Emma and I were building together, but now every shared moment felt tainted by her doubt. I spent the next few nights sleeping on the couch, unable to lie next to her knowing what she truly felt. The distance between us was palpable, an unspoken acknowledgement that things had changed. Emma tried to go about her routine as if everything was normal. She cooked, cleaned, and even made small talk, but it all felt forced. I could see the guilt in her eyes every time she looked at me, but I didn't know how to bridge the gap between us, or if I even wanted to. I turned to my best friend, Mike, for support. He was the kind of guy who could offer tough love while still being a good listener. "You need to figure out what you want," Mike said over beers one evening. "Do you want to stay and try to fix this? Or do you think it's already too far gone?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to believe we can work through it, but another part of me can't get past what she said. How do you stay with someone who wonders if they settled for you?" Mike nodded thoughtfully. "That's a tough one, but you deserve someone who's all in, man. Not someone who's half-assing it because they're afraid to be alone." His words stuck with me. Over the next few days, I started noticing more cracks in our relationship, things I had ignored or dismissed before. Emma wasn't just restless. She was distant. She spent more time on her phone, retreating to the bedroom for alone time that stretched into hours. I began to wonder if her doubts were about more than just our marriage. One night, as I was scrolling through Netflix, Emma's phone buzzed on the counter. She wasn't around, and I glanced at the screen instinctively. The message preview read, "You looked amazing last night. Let's do it again soon." My heart dropped. When Emma came back into the room, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Who's texting you at this hour?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. She froze for a moment before reaching for her phone. "Just a friend," she said quickly. "A friend who thinks you looked amazing last night?" I said, raising an eyebrow. Her face turned pale. "It's not what you think," she said. "Then what is it, Emma?" I pressed. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like there's more going on here than just confusion." She didn't answer, and the silence spoke louder than any words could. That night, I packed a bag and left. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do, but I knew I couldn't stay in a house filled with lies and half-truths. As I drove aimlessly through the city, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and relief. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't pretending everything was fine. After leaving the house that night, I stayed with Mike. His spare room wasn't much, just a futon and a stack of old boxes, but it felt like a safe haven. He didn't press me for details, knowing I wasn't ready to talk. For the first few days, I focused on getting through the motions, going to work, eating when I could stomach it, and trying not to let my thoughts spiral. But no matter how hard I tried, Emma's words and actions played on a loop in my head. I knew I needed answers, even if they would hurt. One evening, I decided to dig deeper. I logged into our shared phone account, something I hadn't done in years, and checked the call and text records. A particular number appeared frequently, late at night, during lunch breaks, even when we were supposed to be spending time together. My stomach churned as I realized this wasn't just some passing connection. Whoever this person was, they had become a significant part of her life. I confronted Emma the next day. I didn't tell her I was coming. I wanted her caught off guard. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, her expression shifted from surprise to guilt in an instant. "We need to talk," I said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. She nodded, her hands wringing nervously. "Okay," she said, leading me to the living room. I didn't waste any time. "Who's the guy?" I asked bluntly. Emma's face flushed. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "I saw the texts. I know you've been talking to someone. So tell me the truth. Who is he?" She hesitated, and for a moment, I thought she might try to lie again. But then she sighed, her shoulders slumping. His name is Jake, she admitted. We used to date before you and I met. He reached out a few months ago, and we started talking. Talking? I repeated, my voice laced with sarcasm. That's what you call it? She winced. It wasn't supposed to be anything serious, she said. It started as catching up, but I guess I got carried away. Carried away? I said, laughing bitterly. Emma, you didn't just get carried away. You betrayed me. You broke the trust we built, and for what? Some ex who suddenly decided to come back into your life? Tears streamed down her face, but I didn't feel sympathy. Not this time. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, her voice trembling. I was just so confused about everything, and Jake made me feel. Made you feel what? I interrupted. Like I wasn't enough? Like you had to chase some fantasy instead of working on the life we had together? She didn't answer, and the silence told me everything I needed to know. I stood up, my chest tight with a mix of anger and heartbreak. We're done, Emma, I said. I deserve better than this. She reached for my arm, her tears falling freely now. Please, don't do this, she begged. I can fix it. I'll stop talking to him. Just give me a chance. I shook my head, pulling away from her grasp. You had your chance, I said, and you blew it. As I walked out of the house for the last time, I felt a strange sense of relief. The weight of her lies and betrayal was gone, replaced by the clarity that I was better off without her. The weeks after ending things with Emma were a whirlwind of emotions. Some days, I felt liberated, finally free from the weight of her betrayal. Other days, the anger and sadness crept in, making me question how I had missed the signs for so long. I threw myself into work, using the hours to distract myself from the memories. Mike's support never wavered. He'd drag me out for beers, push me to hit the gym, and remind me that life didn't end with Emma. She's the one who messed up, not you, he'd say. And trust me, karma has a funny way of balancing things out. Turns out, he was right. One evening, about a month after the breakup, Claire called me with some surprising news. Hey, she said, her voice laced with curiosity. You're not going to believe this, but I ran into Sarah, Emma's friend. Apparently, things between Emma and Jake aren't exactly picture perfect. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Claire chuckled. Sarah said Jake has been seeing someone else behind Emma's back. She found out a few days ago and is completely devastated. I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter, ironic laugh that came from the deepest part of me. So, the guy she threw away our marriage for is cheating on her? Yep, Claire said. Karma's a real thing, huh? Hearing that news didn't bring me joy. It wasn't in my nature to revel in someone else's pain, but it did bring a sense of closure. Emma had made her choice, and now she was facing the consequences. A few days later, Emma reached out to me. Her name popping up on my phone sent a jolt through my system, but I debated whether to respond. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Hey, she said softly, her voice filled with hesitation. What do you want, Emma? I asked, my tone calm but distant. I wanted to say I'm sorry, she said, for everything, for hurting you, for betraying your trust. You didn't deserve any of it. Her apology caught me off guard, but I didn't let it sway me. I appreciate the apology, I said, but it doesn't change what happened. I know, she said quickly. I wanted to explain. Things with Jake, they weren't what I thought they'd be. Let me stop you right there, I interrupted. I don't need to know what happened with Jake. That's your mess to deal with, not mine. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before she spoke again. Do you think there's any chance we could, I don't know, start over? Try to rebuild? I sighed, the weight of her request settling over me. Emma, I cared about you more than anything, I said, but what you did broke something that can't be fixed. I can't go back to someone who treated me like an afterthought. She started to cry, but I didn't waver. This was the closure I needed, the moment where I put myself first. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said before hanging up. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. Hanging up the phone after that final conversation with Emma felt like closing a chapter I'd been stuck in for far too long. There was no lingering anger, no what-ifs, just the clarity that I deserved better and the resolve to move forward. Life after Emma was a process of rediscovery. For so long, I had defined myself within the context of our relationship, bending and compromising to keep things afloat. But now, for the first time in years, I was living solely for myself. I started with small changes, things I'd neglected during the relationship. I picked up hobbies I'd long forgotten, like cooking and hiking. The quiet solitude of the trails gave me a sense of peace, a reminder that I was capable of finding joy in my own company. Work became another outlet for growth. I threw myself into new projects, earning the respect of my colleagues, and even landing a promotion a few months later. The confidence I gained from my professional achievements reminded me of my value outside of a relationship. My support system played a huge role in my healing. Mike and Claire were constant sources of encouragement, reminding me that the breakup, while painful, was ultimately a blessing in disguise. "You're better off," Claire said one evening over dinner. "Emma showed you who she really was. Now you can find someone who truly values you." Her words stuck with me, not because I was ready to start dating again, but because they reminded me that I was worthy of love, the kind of love that didn't come with doubts or conditions. Over time, the bitterness I'd felt toward Emma faded. I didn't need to forgive her for her sake, but for mine. Carrying that anger around would have only weighed me down, and I was determined to move forward unburdened. One day, while organizing my apartment, I came across a box of items from our marriage. Photos, letters, little mementos of the life we had built together. For a moment, I considered holding on to it, but then I realized it was time to let go. I donated what I could, recycled the rest, and felt a sense of freedom as the box disappeared from my life. A few weeks later, I decided to celebrate my newfound independence by taking a solo trip to the mountains. It was something I'd always wanted to do but had never made time for. Standing at the peak, looking out at the endless expanse of trees and sky, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. I realized then that the experience with Emma, while painful, had taught me invaluable lessons. I learned the importance of self-worth, the value of setting boundaries, and the necessity of trusting my instincts. Most importantly, I learned that love isn't about settling or second-guessing. It's about mutual respect, trust, and choosing each other every day. Now, my life is fuller than ever. I've built a version of myself that I'm proud of, a person who doesn't rely on someone else to feel whole. Emma's chapter in my life may have ended with heartbreak, but it paved the way for growth, clarity, and a brighter future. If there's one thing I've taken from all of this, it's that sometimes the hardest lessons lead to the greatest transformations. And for that, I'm grateful. Here's to moving forward, stronger and wiser than ever before.